Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our HipFest at Home presentations for 2026. Thank you for joining us. My name is Alison Strauss, and I am the director of HipFest and the programmer of the Hippodrome year round. We'll just start off with a bit of housekeeping before we get properly underway. Subtitles are available by clicking the CC or closed caption icon in the YouTube video player. If you're joining this presentation for the online premiere, you can submit questions or comments in the chat box. Our speaker, Janet, has kindly agreed to watch along as this talk goes live, so we'll endeavour to respond to any messages in the chat throughout the presentation. And just so you know, the window will close quite quickly once the premiere has concluded, so don't save all your questions for the end. Try to drop them in as we go. Now, that's all the practicalities out of the way. It's really good to be back in the virtual realm with you all. In fact, it feels like we've scarcely been away, as there's been lots going on, what with our monthly podcast and the always available back catalogue of presentations from a whole host of brilliant speakers recorded over the last 5 years. And as I'm sure you know, our annual HipFest activity is concentrated over 5 days in March. But we've been keeping the silent film fires burning, metaphorically, of course, with touring our new music commission for The Rugged Island, a Shetland lyric directed by Glasgow-born filmmaker Jenny Gilbertson. The next steps on the tour will be Aberdeen on the 7th of February and Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides on the 5th of February. The Stornoway show was originally scheduled for last October, but all the Calmac ferry sailings were cancelled because of Storm Benjamin, forcing the musicians to turn back, something the islanders are well used to, of course. And it's been a genuine highlight of my career to bring this commission together and take it across Scotland, especially when we took the film plus music commission to the film's true home in Shetland when we were there last September. Now, the Rugged Island is a gorgeous and strangely rare example of indigenous filmmaking from the silent era. And over the years, we've leaned into all things Scottish at HipFest with screenings of films like Annie Laurie, Rob Roy, and The Loves of Mary, Queen of Scots, plus many non-fiction shorts, newsreels, and amateur films from the National Library of Scotland's Moving Image Archive. And this year will be no exception, as will be revealed when we launch the full programme next month. Now, the fact that we can still enjoy watching these homegrown productions today, and indeed watch any Scottish film from this period, is thanks in no small part to Janet McBain. I'm very pleased indeed that our inaugural presentation for this year on the subject of Scotland on the silent screen will be presented by Janet. Janet McBain was recruited in 1976 to catalogue a jumbled collection of films housed in a shed behind the Scottish Film Council headquarters in Glasgow. And from these modest beginnings, Janet grew a film archive for Scotland, seeking out film donations from across the land and leading the organisation for 35 years until retiring in 2011. In post as founding curator, Janet championed film preservation and access, as well as publishing numerous articles and essays on aspects of Scottish film history and co-presenting the Grampian TV series The Way It Was in the 1980s and 90s. She was awarded the Outstanding Achievement in Film by BAFTA Scotland for her work in preserving and presenting Scotland's film heritage, and in 2016 was awarded the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters from the University of Glasgow. Janet is one of film archiving's heroes, not just in Scotland, but internationally. And on a personal note, I'm deeply grateful to her for being kind and encouraging when I was just starting out as a wet behind the ears trainee film archivist 30 years ago. I'm delighted to say that this presentation will feature piano accompaniment by the wonderfully talented musician and HipFest regular, Mike Nolan, who will provide accompaniment for some of the clips Janet has selected. Now, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to our presenter, Janet McBain.
Hi, hello, my name's Janet McBain, and thank you, Ali, for that wonderful introduction. It was indeed my privilege to be the founding curator of the Scottish Film Archives, as it was then, until I retired, some 15 years ago. And the world has changed a great deal in film archives since then, with digital restorations and more discoveries. But what I recall is a growing sense of puzzlement and frustration at what appeared to me to be a missing film history, that of its Scottish indigenous fiction film production. And I do remember attending the Pordenone Silent Film Festival in the 1980s and enjoying a programme of New Zealand-made films, which no one had seen at the time, and thinking, well, if a country the size of New Zealand could have a fiction film industry, why hasn't Scotland? Anyway, the Pordenone Festival, which was then very much about fictional silent cinema, gave me the chance in 1998 when I was invited to curate a programme of films about Scotland. And then it really hit home how little had survived, and that the kind of Scotland that was portrayed was not the Scotland of non-fiction film that I had been uncovering in the previous 3 decades. But as I say, lots of things have changed greatly since 1998. Digital restoration has revealed a lot of material that was inaccessible before, and the existence of HipFest under Ali's talented direction as a platform to show such film was not available then. So for the Pordenone programme and audiences who had an appetite not so much for factual but for fiction film, I brought, somewhat riskily, some of my favourite non-fiction films. And my archival colleagues, bless them, in the USA, found Mary Pickford and Lillian Gish story films to show at the festival. We produced a small commemorative programme which highlighted some missing films, which are still missing. And then in the years afterwards, academia took up the cudgels and mounted a major research project into early Scottish film production. This website, Early Cinema Project, well, I don't know if the Early Cinema Project ever did definitively answer the question as to why Scotland's native film industry was not successful. But there were indeed a number of factors at play, not least to do with the tiny size of the native film-going population in Scotland, the dominance of America and their shared use of English to address that population. But they say history goes round in circles. The same questions still asked today. What is a Scottish film? Why do we not have a film studio in Scotland? Suffice to say that the fictional representation of Scotland in silent cinema that has survived is not the representation that most Scots would relate to. But it does make for some glorious historical drama. Whether this is based on Walter Scott or Conan Doyle, there's plenty of material for big screen entertainment, which is where Ali Strauss and her team at HipFest have played such a blinder with their rediscovery and representation of Scotland on screen in the silent era. And this year, HipFest will be showing a number of films that I would have given my eye teeth for, and for which were not available to us for Pordenone in 1998. This includes Kidnapped, made in 1917, and The White Heather, some 2 years later. But for the commemorative programme in 1998, we noted that so much of what we regarded as our native production was on the missing, believed, lost list. And it still is. Apparently, 80% of silent cinema has not survived, and small budget films, one-offs if you like, without major distribution, were the worst casualties. And this is a big factor in Scottish filmmaking in the teens and 20s of the 20th century. there were just not the large numbers of prints extant in the world. Also, there was a monetary value to the nitrocellulose negatives, which contained an amount of silver. And who knows what was sold to cover short-term cash flow problems. I personally think that that's what's happened to the Harry Lauder film Hunting Tower. It was sold because of the silver content of the nitrate stock. So what survived has not necessarily a masterpiece, but what fate has determined should have found its way into the archives. And another factor that dictated what we could show at Pordenone was the existence of a good 35mm print. Well, with digital, that doesn't signify anymore. So much more footage is now available. And in a way, it's not surprising that most of what we would regard as our native output has not survived single prints. And other than a few stills or a review in the trade papers, that's all that exists of these films. Now, missing, believed, lost is still a cry throughout film archives worldwide. But thanks to HipFest and digital technology, we have the rare chance to see some screen representations of Scottishness, screen representations that did enthrall and entertain audiences worldwide, even if not particularly well received in Scotland. So, for my presentation today, I'd like to show you some of my favourite films showing a real Scotland in the era of silent film, and then a selection of images of Scotland that was seen worldwide, drawn from the stereotypes of Scottishness and the rich tradition of Scottish literature, authors such as Walter Scott, Robert Louis Stevenson, et al. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions from the differences. So, first clip is one of a large collection in the Scottish Screen Archive, as it now is, of a large collection of local topical films made by cinema managers or projectionists to advertise their own cinema by inviting locals to come into the picture house and see themselves on the big screen. Great Western Road was a pair of films made by James Hart of a Sunday morning constitutional after church in Glasgow's fashionable West End, where his cinema was located. Now, he filmed first on a Sunday morning in 1915 and again in 1922. And this clip is from the first of these two films, 1915. And those of you who are eagle-eyed will note how the camera and the car on which, or the running board of the car on which it's mounted, is traveling the wrong way down Great Western Road. So our first film clip comes from Great Western Road, made in 1915. Now, this next clip is one of a number of films made by Glasgow-based family business, The Greens, who had aspirations in the late teens and early 20s to break into the newsreel business with their Scottish Moving Picture News. Their footage of the opening of a public park in Coatbridge in 1919 includes entertainment for all, including the larger, or the rather dangerous, competition to cut down a side of ham blindfold. Any health and safety officers amongst you should look away now. So here's a clip from the opening of Drumpellier Moss, 1919, with the cutting down the ham competition. Now, another local topical, and possibly my favourite film of all time, made by the local exhibitor Tommy Timmins at the tail end of the silent era, demonstrates a high level of community engagement. From the bakers who'd been up for hours making the inevitable pies for the outing, to crowds lining the street of this small town on the edge of the Fife coalfield to wave off their elders on an outing to a local beauty spot at Crook O'Devon, a whole 7 miles away. Now, anyone familiar with the Bruins will recognise Paul and Grandpa Brune. And as for the ferocious looking wives, the grannies, well, who'd take issue with them? Youngsters then play up to the camera and would no doubt pester their parents to let them go to the picture house to see themselves in close-up on the big screen. Then we have some fictional representations of Scotland. We're going to see the whole of a film called Macnab's Visit to London, made in 1905, and it features every Scottish stereotype you can imagine. It was produced, directed, and starred Arthur Melbourne Cooper as a comic caricature Highlander. Now, this is 1905. Did he set the bar for future screen representation of the kilted, somewhat stingy Scotsman? And then we have another clip from the wonderful film Laurie, made in 1927. Now, Lillian Gish, who played the eponymous Laurie, well, played fast and loose with history. She gets caught up in the massacre of Glencoe, but the film went down a storm at the Pordenone Silent Film Festival. And in this clip from early in the film, the MacDonalds renew their feud with the Campbells. Now, Ian MacDonald, the son of the clan chief, is played by the film actor Norman Kerry, who was a very successful screen actor in the silent period, but he has shaved his chest beautifully for this part. And then we'll find our final clip today is from Kidnapped, made in 1917, and a recent restoration of Robert Louis Stevenson's famous story of the adventures of David Balfour. In the clip, David and his new friend, Alan Breck Stewart, are wrongly implicated in the shooting of the hated Campbell, the Red Fox, and chased by the Redcoats. And it's a rare chance to see this film at this year's Hip Fest in Bo'ness. Well, that's all for me, and I'm just so delighted that there's so many films. I am really looking forward to seeing Kidnapped at Hip Fest in Bo'ness in March, and I've never seen it before, so that'll be quite a treat.
Thank you so much, Janet. Yes, we did enjoy your selection today. It was really wonderful to see those clips that you picked out for us and the wee insights that you have, the little details like the car going the wrong way down the Great Western Road. I know that you'll have won many new fans for that wonderful film about the pensioners of Lochgelly. And there really is this undeniable pleasure in seeing Scottish stories handled with the same big production values that we're used to seeing from studios like NGM. And lots of food for thought too on the questions you raised, Janet, about why Scotland's native film industry lagged behind that of other countries in the silent era. Maybe it's the weather. We don't have as much sunshine, after all, as the south of England or California for that matter. This is a good time to remind everyone that the National Library of Scotland Moving Image Archive has a wonderful online resource where you can explore around 100 years of Scotland's history captured by amateur and professional filmmakers. Watch over 3,000 clips and full-length films and check out the DVD compilations that they have for sale. And there's also a fab visitor centre at Kelvin Hall in Glasgow where you can watch curated content or book into a viewing room with special equipment for viewing all kinds of formats. Final thanks again to Janet, and thank you to Mike for your music. Big thanks also to the National Library, of course, to the Library of Congress, to Kino Lorber and Fritzi Kramer silently for making the clips available to us for this presentation. And thanks to all of you at home for joining us. If you've joined us in the week of the live premiere, you'll have had a wee heads up of some of the Scottish treats we have coming up in this year's festival ahead of our full programme reveal on the 4th of February. Now, this conversation will remain on the Falkirk Leisure and Culture YouTube channel in our Hipfest at Home playlist, where you can re-watch whenever you like, tell your friends. And I hope you will join us again soon for our next Hipfest at Home presentation. We've got 2 more scheduled from now until the festival kickoff, both designed to complement the programme and spark your enthusiasm for what's to come. There will be lots for you to enjoy wherever you are. A quick reminder, our excellent value Hipfest passes are on sale now with 5-day and weekend passes available, as well as a weekend pass for under 30s. Numbers are limited, so grab yours as soon as you can to avoid disappointment. And a final note, we think it's important that these presentations are available year-round, free of charge, and are committed to continuing to grow our library of multimedia resources via our Hipfest at Home playlist. We hope you enjoy browsing the other titles available and learning more about silent film from the diverse lineup of knowledgeable speakers. If you have the means and would like to donate to Hipfest to support our online and in-person programming, there is a link in the episode info which will allow you to do so. And just note that there are 4 Falkirk Council venue options seeking donations, and each option autofills £1, so please amend the amounts however you wish, and Hipfest is the second box. Thank you. See you soon.